Okay. And also, one more thing I usually say is please be vocal. Unmute yourself anytime you have anything to raise. It's going to be a common topic. Everybody would. I hope everyone will. It'll be easy for everybody to understand. And I also would like to say this one more time. Please unmute yourself. Ask questions. Let's not make it a one-way street here. Let's make it as interactive and engaging as possible. So let's begin. I hope I am audible to everybody. Okay. So today we are going to talk about how to combat the false sense of security, the perception of security everyone has, and how we are going to talk about risk. We are going to talk about the different controls which are in place. We are going to talk about the ways we can find out whether the controls are effective or implemented right. So this is basically our agenda. We are going to have an introduction, why we are going with this webinar today. What is the risk? What is in general a risk? That is something which we are going to talk about, and various kind of security controls and defenses that are available to protect against risk. And effectiveness, the next thing which we are going to cover about is effectiveness of security controls and defenses. And we will also talk about how to test the effectiveness. So the first one will speak about importance. The second one is going to talk about how to test the effectiveness of the security controls which we have in place to mitigate risks or to avoid risk. To safeguard against risk. And the last one, we are going to speak about Ingram micro cybersecurity capabilities. Here we will talk about what are the capabilities of Ingram micro, how we can assist organizations to protect or to test their security controls or test the defenses. So let's begin with one of the main reasons is to avoid pretext of being secure. So the reason for this topic, as I said earlier, we are going to talk about your organization security posture, how to test your organization security posture, what kind of assumptions we have. We will also look at the stats about the assumptions we have and the security controls we have, and why we are not configuring them right, and how to test and mitigate this risk. So this is a statistics I found with infosecurityeurope.com. So one of the key things what they have mentioned here is 80% of security products capabilities are not utilized by an organization, which means that the security controls which we have, the technology-based security controls we have in an organization are not being fully utilized, which means that you are not protecting the organization, or you are not mitigating all risks that can be mitigated by the controls or by the products. And we also always have this thought that we put in a security control that should take care of everything. No, it will not do that. See, one of the reasons study said there are 54% of emails containing ransomware are not being blocked by most security solutions, which means our email security gateway is not fully efficient. If that wasn't the case, we will not be seeing spam emails in our inbox. Yeah, if they are. And having said that, 100% security is never achievable if you want to run business. I always say that. So there will be some relaxations. There will be some risk acceptance as part of implementing any solutions in an organization to make sure the business is viable. And as I always say, security should be more of an enabler rather than a stopper of things. So we are here as security professionals to enable an organization to function as they are supposed to function in a secure way. So that is the reason why one of the 3 pillars of security is availability. People we usually call CIA triad. One of the key pillars is availability. And the next point is 15% of vulnerabilities are a result of misconfiguration. So when we say vulnerabilities, we are talking about weakness. And weakness doesn't only mean software weakness. If you're not configuring things right, that is also a problem. So that is what they are referring here as part of the statistics. The next one here they are saying is 60% of cases where attackers were able to, where a successful attack happened against an organization was within minutes. It did not take a very long time. So this is based on the research they have found. So what is risk? So risk is nothing but a probability or a possibility that something bad can happen that can adversely impact the organization's assets against the three main things: the confidentiality, integrity, availability. We can also add privacy to it. Since security can be without privacy, but privacy cannot be without security. So the following is the condition for a risk to materialize. And if you notice, there is an X, it's more of a multiply symbol. So risk is asset multiplied by vulnerability multiplied by threat. Risk can only materialize. The reason for that multiply symbol is if any one of that a value is 0, there is no risk. So that is the main reason, because having said that, so if there is no asset, what is the risk we are facing? And we have asset, there is also a threat. But if we do not have any vulnerability, there won't be any risk. And let's say you have asset and vulnerability, but if the threat is, if you do not have any threat, then it means that there is no risk. The probability of something bad happening will not be there. So that is what it means. So terminology. So here we are going to talk about asset. Asset. So when we talk about asset, it is not only the software or hardware asset, it is also the people, the data. Data is always considered an asset for an organization, but even the people, the employees of an organization is also an asset. So anything and everything in an organization would want to protect is considered an asset for the organization. Vulnerability. Vulnerability refers to weakness in general that can bring harm to an asset, basically. And it includes, as mentioned here, it is not limited to software weakness, but it also talks about improper configuration, that is still a weakness, improper implementation of security controls, that is still a weakness. So these are all vulnerabilities which can be exploited. These are all weaknesses which can be exploited by a threat. Threat is nothing but, it can be an action or an actor that can cause harm to the asset of an organization or any interest of an organization. It can be intentional or an accidental action. So it doesn't have to be always intentional. That is what we are trying to understand here. It is like an employee clicking on a phishing email by mistake due to the lack of awareness. So that is accidental. And intentional is a threat actor wanted to bypass your security or come into an organization. That is an intentional activity. So the entire topic surrounds this: due care versus due diligence. So we need to understand what is due care and what is due diligence and the difference between them. Due care is the reasonable care an organization undertakes to protect its interests, which means protect its assets. Due diligence, it refers to the activities to evaluate and ensure due care is in place, which means that this provides a way to ensure that all the controls are implemented in the right way, or all the required controls are considered. So that is what due diligence. That is the main difference between due care and due diligence. So now we are going to talk about security controls and defenses. These are the categories of security controls and defenses to protect an organization. So all the controls which we are going to talk about in the next, the types of controls are going to revolve around this. So there are three types of controls. There are three categories of controls, not types, categories of controls. One is administrative control, the other one is technical control, the third one is physical control. So these are the three different controls which has to be implemented to form a defense in depth approach to protect an organization's asset. So having said that, does anyone would like to talk about the types of controls which we are going to cover in the next? So do we know what are the types of controls available to protect an organization? And these controls will fall under these three categories anyways. Anyone can unmute, say something. Let me give everybody a minute if somebody wants to jump in and comment. Let me also check the chat real quick.
Oh, hi. This is Andy Natson. Let me jump in. Access controls, for example.
So your voice is a little low, Andy. So
access controls.
Access controls, yes, access controls. Yeah. Yep. So everything is control is all about access control. Yeah, that is one of a good thing you said over there.
Encryption.
So,
Oh, network defense.
Okay. Fantastic. So anyone else would like to talk about the type of controls? That's fine. We'll be there. Thank you, Andy.
Privileges.
Yeah.
Privileges.
Privileges. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
That is one of the things. Adopting principle of least privilege, for example.
Yes.
Making a policy is an administrative control, and implementing access control to ensure the principle of least privilege is maintained is by using technology is a technical control, and allowing only people to pass through an entrance is kind of a physical control. So fantastic. Yeah. So let's let's have a look at these categories in detail, followed by let's move on to types of controls. So yeah, let's talk about that. First, administrative control is all about policies and procedures, so which we have in an organization. So it is like we ensure that people follow them. We first put in a policy and procedure as a guideline for an organization to govern everyday activity. So this administrative control usually defines authorized activity that can be done within an organization. And it is also used to communicate management intent to protect the interest of the organization. And usually administrative controls are enforced with the help of technical and physical control, as well as awareness and trainings. Next one we are going to speak about is technical control. Technical control are nothing but logical controls. These are usually technology-based controls, as we just spoke about. And access control, for instance, password policy will be an administrative control, but implementing a password policy on a system using a GPO is a technology-based control. And it has both hardware and software components of it. And some of the examples are from a technical control perspective to protect against risk is endpoint protection software I mentioned here, firewall devices, encryption, etc. So these are some of the technical controls. So physical control. When we speak about physical control, we are talking about restricting the physical access, restricting people's movement, carrying the things out of the organization. It's all about physical state of an object or a person, for instance. So physical controls talks about they are responsible for physical security, like doors, man traps, and even cameras can be part of physical control. So these are physical devices that are used to protect the organization and prevents or monitors unauthorized physical access. So basically, the physical control is around to monitor unauthorized access and prevents unauthorized physical access. So all these controls are there to mitigate risk by preventing unauthorized access. So, for example, doors, cameras, locks can be controlled as part of physical controls. So these are the types of controls which I was talking about. And whatever the examples we mentioned by Andy, and I'm sorry I missed the other person's name, mentioned by both of them will fall under these category. Sorry, these types of controls. And these types of controls will fall under the categories which we explained before, the 3 categories. So a single control can also fall under 2 categories or multiple categories. So the first one we are going to speak about, these are 7 controls which are mentioned here. The first one is deterrent, the second one is preventive, the third one is detective, fourth one is corrective, fifth one is directive, sixth one is compensating controls, and the last one is recovery control. So let's talk about deterrent before I move to the next slide. So what do you think is deterrent? Is that even a control? So would anybody like to answer? What is deterrent control? And some examples would also be fine.
Hi, I think it's kind of monitoring, knowing what's exactly going on, just looking around for things.
Fantastic. Yeah. Anyone else would like to give it a shot as well? Thank you for that answer, by the way.
I think deterrent control is the control which determined or identify the good person or the one who is passing through my companies like cams or any surveillance systems.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Thank you both. Let me go back. I'm sorry about that. Um, Thank you. for messaging. Yeah. So thank you both for the answers. Both were there, and I was talking about deterrent control. Yeah. So deterrent control is there to discourage an unauthorized activity. It doesn't mean that you are going to, it is not a preventive control, as in it is not going to prevent an unauthorized activity from happening. It is going to discourage a person who is going to perform an unauthorized activity. So basically, having a camera on the streets, it's going to prevent you from overspeeding in general. It doesn't even matter whether it has to be on or not. If people do not even know whether it is recording or not, but it will. Some of the most of a population will tend not to do something bad when someone's watching. So that is what deterrent control is all about, and it is very much needed. So if you can slim down the chances of a risk to happen, that's very good, right? Instead of having a preventive control, a deterrent control is very important to work in conjunction with a preventive control. So as mentioned earlier, it is not going to prevent an unauthorized activity. It is going to discourage an individual from bypassing the control. So these are like policies or generally administrative controls. When we say we have policy not to do something, it means that it is an administrative control, and the people want to abide by policies to avoid any repercussions. But you can still bypass the policies. Intrusion detection system. So these are only detection system. These are not prevention system. So that is there. Cameras and fences, basically. Cameras and fences are again physical controls. It's again a deterrent control. So when there is a camera or a fence, we try not to bypass the control, but still you can jump over the fence or still walk by the camera and do anything you want to do. So that's the reason why it is a deterrent control. And the reason why intrusion detection system is here, can anybody say the reason? Because it will also be under detective control as well. The reason why it is here is if somebody knows there are some security controls there and there is a way something can be detected, some malicious activity can be detected, people get deterred from doing certain things. So that is the reason why one of the examples here is mentions intrusion detection system. Yeah. Preventive control. These are controls which is going to stop unauthorized activity from happening. So for example, intrusion prevention systems or a firewall. If we are going to block the ports, a person is not going to be will not be able to enter on that particular port. And access control doors or access control systems. So these are all preventive controls which are in place to stop an unauthorized activity. That is generally a preventive control, as the name says. So detective control. These are controls that are in place to detect an unauthorized activity. So that is the reason why we also have intrusion detection systems here. We have an SIEM in our environment. So basically it will collect logs and reports, and it'll provide you reports in the end. And in the end, these are all detective in nature. So door ajar warnings, for instance, if the door is open for a very long time, we will get to know there will be an alarm, and we'll get to know the door has been open for a long time. So these are like detective controls. But these controls again do not prevent any unauthorized activity. Preventive control prevents it. Detective control is used to detect about the unauthorized activity so that we can put in necessary measures to prevent it. Because there will be places wherein you cannot put an intrusion prevention system, but so you need to detect intrusions so that you can apply certain things during a certain period of time, not all the time, even if it is not possible. The next one we are going to speak about is corrective control. So what is the difference between a preventive control and a corrective control? Let's go back to the previous slide so that if somebody would like to voice, please go ahead.
About detective control, lose may happen, right?
So when we are talking about detective control,
Yes, yes, about detective control. I mean, even if the unauthorized activity detected, lose may happen, right?
yeah, yes, loss, definitely loss will happen. So that is the reason why. Okay, so we are still in detective control. So that is the reason why it is clearly mentioned. That is the second point, which says that it does not prevent an unauthorized activity, but there are certain things wherein if it falls under the risk acceptance criteria, right? So you need to detect. So if you cannot protect everything, there will be certain instances wherein you should be able to detect, and at least at a later stage you can go and perform corrective actions. So loss will happen, but if it is under the acceptance criteria, then it is good. If it is not under the acceptance criteria, you need to detect an unauthorized activity and prevent it, to ensure that that is where we will also do the corrective actions. So that is why I'm going to talk about corrective control. So when we talk about corrective control, it is all about fixing a problem. So the question also was around this, wherein what is the difference between preventive control and a corrective control? So again, corrective control is not going to prevent an unauthorized activity. It is more of correcting the problems. For instance, if a system is infected, you will do a run a AB scan to clean the infection. If a system is infected due to old definitions, the latest definition will be able to protect. That is becoming a preventive control, updating AV and everything, so that it becomes a preventive control. But at the same time, if the signatures are not up to date, the system is infected. So you update the signatures, or you wait for the latest signatures available to clean that system, and or in other cleaning a system from that malware. It becomes a corrective control. Or sometimes we end up rebooting a server to fix an issue, a problem which has occurred. That is all again a corrective control. When the system hangs, you are going to lose some data, but you are at least fixing it to ensure the availability is back on. So all this control revolves around security concepts, CIA triad, security concepts, CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Since corrective control will ensure the availability of the systems. So that's basically it. You will still lose the data in this as well, or lose, there will be still a loss, but still you will fix it. You will not let it happen for a long time. So that is what it is. If availability is not there, you will face even more loss. So that is what corrective control is all about. The next one, directive control. So these are controls which are going to talk about how to do or guide a person to do certain things. For instance, during an emergency, or an exit sign is going to tell you which way you need to go, which way you have to exit. So these are called directive controls. They provide directions to perform certain activity. And again, it does not prevent unauthorized activity, or it does not prevent, or it does not enforce the control, wherein it can say go left, but people can still go right. So directive control does not enforce anything, but then it is going to provide you directions on how to perform an activity. That is the primary objective of a directive control, which is also very much needed to guide everyone. Compensating control. So compensating control is the control which is used to reinforce another control, right? So two controls can work in tandem. So that is what compensating control is all about. It will offer additional level of protection. Here the example talks about, so you have data in your organization and data at rest is protected. So so data at rest is protected. So what does it mean? It means that if the data, if an administrator has access to that particular server, if you are going to encrypt if you are going to employ full disk encryption to protect data at rest. And an authorized user from an administrator perspective can access that system, but he is not authorized to see the data. If data at rest is implemented, an unauthorized user who doesn't have access to that system will not be able to see the data, even if he gets hold of the hard disk. But an authorized user can see the data. So here is the paradox. So from a system level perspective, he is authorized, but from a data level perspective, he is not authorized. This is the same as implementing TDE on a database level. TDE is going to protect a database contents against an unauthorized user, but not against a system or a database admin. Whereas the owner of the data is only the application owner or the data owner. So implementing encryption at an application layer will encrypt the data and store the data at rest. So that way, data at rest encryption will also be beneficial, wherein people cannot extract the whole data, and then it offers 2 layers of protection now. So the ideal way of protecting the data, even from unauthorized admins, or even from system admins who are generally not authorized to see the data, should be encrypting it at the application layer. And the additional level of compensating control will be adding a data at rest protection as well. So you are secure in both places. So let's say, for instance, encryption is applied to critical data, and there are some other data which is available. Even you don't want to encrypt that, even if it is stored on plain text, you can still protect it using data at rest, a whole disk encryption or TDE, for instance, from a DB layer. So that is what compensating control is all about. And control which is going to reinforce the existing control. It's like having 2 locks for a door. The next one we are going to talk about is recovery control. This is one of the important things. So this complements corrective controls. Again, recovery control is not about preventing unauthorized activity. Rather, it is about recovering a system's availability. So, for instance, backing up the systems is very important. And as part of corrective control, you will restore the system. So backing up, to perform this particular control, you need to back up. So these are recovery controls. And having high available configuration is also a kind of a recovery control, so that if one system fails, there is another system which can support the load which is needed to ensure availability. Recovery control is, again, the major thing recovery control is going to talk about is availability. So that's all about controls. So the next topic we are going to talk about is efficacy or effectiveness of security control/defenses. What is the importance of it? So you're as strong as the weakest link, as everyone knows. So importance of testing your defenses. We are going to cover this. So by testing your defenses, you will know you will get better insight of the organization's security posture. And it will allow you to make informed decisions. You will know, okay, this control is not effective here, so we have to be a little more careful. We can add a compensating control, or for instance, the intrusion detection system, the detective control, or a deterrent control is there. We can add, okay, this deterrent control is enough, but in this area, it is okay if we don't have an access control door. At least we will be able to monitor people. For instance, receptions will have a deterrent control. So we need to understand whether certain things are enough or not. If somebody bypasses one step, can they again bypass another step of an organization? That is what is all about testing your defenses. So and doing a controlled testing rather than an uncontrolled breach would help us avoid adverse effects. So, and we will also be prepared when actual breach happens. So we will also know, okay, this is the only way something can happen, and we can have this procedure in place, or this control can be in place to prevent that from happening, even though the primary preventive control is not possible. And you will have by testing your defenses, you will have a valid and updated risk register. So risk register is important to know to record all the risks in your organization. And if you do not know, if you do not know the effectiveness of your defenses, what would happen is your risk register, wherein if you have to put a risk as high, instead of high, you would have put it as low. So that is something it will change by testing your defenses. If they are not good enough, we need to make the necessary changes and update the risk register. If we cannot make the changes immediately, we need to at least go and update the risk registers to say we need to perform this change is needed, and accept that risks to a certain period. And as I said earlier, it's going to assist you to implement better countermeasures. And by testing the defenses, you will not completely eradicate, but to a very good extent, you will not be away from the truth. So you will be able to eliminate most of the assumptions you have and any false sense of security you have in the organization. So you will have a better organization security visibility into better organization security posture. So that is what you get by testing your defenses. So method to test the effectiveness of your security controls or defenses. So the ideal way to test is to test like a hacker. Think about what a hacker would do. Think about the resources a hacker would have, and work through that. And that is what you need to prepare to test your security defenses. The one good thing, as I said earlier, it'll be a controlled thing wherein it'll not lead to adverse effects. The next good way of doing that is breach attack simulation. Does anyone know about breach attack simulation here? Or please, if anybody would like to talk about breach attack simulation, please unmute yourself and have a go at it. Thank you. I'll be on mute for a minute. Anybody? So, yeah. So breach attack simulation is the one of the newest technology or the emerging technologies which is gaining its popularity. They will create a simulation of an actual attack within your organizations. It'll find lateral entry points. It'll find the things which you think is not possible. It'll find different ways to enter into a system, and these are automated attacks. They considered many things as part of it, mapping your organization's network and finding ways to perform lateral movements within an organization. So that is one of the main things. And it is technology based. So this is one of an effective way to test your defenses. And conducting periodic audits is also a method to check the effectiveness of your security controls and defenses. And you should also perform periodic vulnerability assessments. So periodic vulnerability assessment. So for instance, patch management is an important corrective control. But by doing periodic vulnerability assessments, you will get to know how good that corrective control is in place. What is happening? Why patches are not applied properly? Why do we still have vulnerabilities? Are these valid vulnerabilities? If we still have vulnerabilities, is there a reason why we still have it? Is our risk register updated? Those things you can find it out by doing periodic vulnerability assessments. The next thing is penetration testing. Vulnerability assessment generally speaks about weakness, software weakness. Penetration testing goes one step further. It talks about software weakness. It will talk about configuration, misconfigurations which are in place. It'll talk about the controls which are not used properly in an environment. So that is what a penetration testing is going to help us with. Physical assessment. These are again very important. To understand the effectiveness of our physical controls. You will have a security guard and doing certain checks. you need to perform these physical assessments to ensure the effectiveness of the security guard. Or, for instance, an administrative control would state that all visitors must be escorted. So by doing this physical assessment, you can ensure whether people are aware of it or say they are leaving security only to the security physical security person who is standing outside. So we will be able to find all those things by testing the controls. So you need to test to understand the efficiency of the controls that we have put in place, which falls under all the three different categories which we spoke of initially. So some of the testing methods we are going to discuss in this chapter. So testing methods for administrative controls, you can initiate phishing campaigns in an organization to find out whether the awareness which we are given, whether the awareness which we have given to the employees are effective or not. And always remember, whenever we say testing methods, not only to this administrative control, for any testing, make sure you get pre-authorization to perform the test with the right body. The test should be confidential to the people who will be involved in the test, but you need to have the right authorization before you perform the test, any test for that matter. And then once you get an authorization, you perform an unauthorized activity to test violations. You will violate an organization policy, for instance, and monitor responses from people who are supposed to respond. So having said that, you can walk into an environment wherein you are not allowed access to, or you can keep the door open and do not lock and see whether anybody is taking any action. So these kind of tests will provide you or will enable you for with data for the next awareness session, so that you can make people aware that, okay, you guys are leaving doors open. We should not be leaving it open. We should always keep it closed. And you should always escort a visitor. If any of the violations were successful, we need to take this data and put it in our next awareness session to address things. So testing method for technical controls, we already spoke of this. These are some of the testing methods which are available to know the effectiveness of the technical controls which we have placed to protect the organization's interests. One is breach attack simulation. The other one is penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, code reviews, and so on. And these are some of the things which are very much important to protect the technical controls. For instance, code review can help you to see secure software development lifecycle is being followed in our organization. Vulnerability assessments, as I said, you can test the effectiveness of your corrective controls like patch management. Penetration testing is going to help you with finding misconfigurations and things like that. Breach attack simulation, it's going to find different ways to penetrate into an environment. Penetration testing is usually a manual one as well, but breach attack simulation is more of an automated one. Testing methods for physical controls. So usually physical control, it's always going to be in-person testing as much as you need it. So you need to perform in-person testing. So you will be entering in an unauthorized location to see whether you are able to successfully enter that location. Or you can carry an unauthorized device, for instance, a mobile phone inside a data center where it is not supposed to be allowed inside your laptop bag. So check whether proper due care is done. That is the main thing, right? So we are going to test to ensure due care is done by the person who is supposed to do it. So these are some of the methods which are used to test the physical controls. You can also check by performing periodic audits. You can also check the camera logs, whether it is logging things properly or not. So these are some of the checks which you can do. And most cases it'll be in-person testing. So these are the three major categories when it comes to controls, and these are some of the methods to test them. And the end result is going to help you to understand the effectiveness of security controls which you have put in place, and reduce the assumptions you have or eliminate certain assumptions you have. So that is one of the main purposes of today's session. So to remove or eliminate assumptions as much as we could, and that can be achieved by following some certain testing methods that are available against the controls, against the categories of controls which we have. Now we are almost done. So now let's talk about Ingram Micro cybersecurity capabilities. These are our capabilities. We spread across all three pillars of an organization, we can call them: people, process, and technology. We have, from an assessment perspective, or to know whether your policies are available, we have technical assessments. We have a category for technical assessment. We do all sorts of services regarding to technical assessments. And same thing for consultancy services. We can tell you what is wrong, perform gap assessment for you, or guide you in the right direction to protect your organization. And we also have managed security services to monitor 24/7, or any of the category testing methods we saw off earlier. We can perform. It is part of our managed security services portfolio. And related to awareness, we do foundational trainings, foundational session for awareness, creating our secure cybersecurity awareness. And we do have advanced cybersecurity trainings as well, and privacy related training. The reason why privacy is highlighted, it is becoming a major concern across the globe now. And we do have trainings under privacy as well. And from a vendor portfolio, this is the vendor portfolio which we cover in the META region. So we cover globally, we cover a lot more vendors. So if there is a requirement, we provide solutions from multiple vendors. It is usually vendor agnostic solutions. From a cybersecurity perspective. So whatever the requirement you have, we are here to find the right solution for you in terms of efficiency and cost effectiveness. That is more or less it. This is the last slide we are going to talk about. Since we are talking about awareness, there is a training portfolio. This is our training portfolio. We do fundamentals of cybersecurity and advanced training such as CISSP, to name a few. And we do privacy trainings related to IAPP-based privacy trainings and the certifications for them as well. When I say certifications, it is certification-based training. So we provide trainings for people to get certified. Privacy trainings include CIPM, CIPP, and we also do tailored trainings as per the requirements for organizations. If you want us to perform an assessment to validate your environment, and if there is an awareness session required, it will be tailored as per what we have found, basically. So yeah, that is it. With this, we are done for today's session. And if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute or type in the chat. I'm more than happy to assist. So if you have any questions, please feel free to mail us. And thank you everyone for joining, and appreciate your participation. I'm going to stop the recording now. Cheers. Have a nice day.